Today we're going to be making canned tomatoes, jarred tomatoes, for use down the road for spaghetti sauce or whatever. And the ingredients that you need are, first of all, plum tomatoes. A nice box of plum tomatoes, and they should all be ripe and no spots on them, no bad spots on them.
It stopped, but continue.
All right. The next ingredient that you're going to need is basil, fresh basil. So when you buy the tomatoes, you get a bunch of basil at the same time.
Okay.
And a little bit of salt, maybe. I'm on a low salt diet, so I'm not going to put any salt in here, but you can put salt in it too. And the first thing we have to do is wash the tomatoes. So I'm going to take these tomatoes and dump them in the sink there and start washing them. Then we're going to cut them into quarters, put them in a pot, and start to cook them for a little while. Okay, so now we're going to wash the tomatoes. We put them in a sink full of water. Let them sit for a couple of minutes so the dirt loosens up. And then what I like to do is just kind of wash them off with a little paper towel, because sometimes the dirt is kind of sticky on there. So I wash them off, go through them all and wash them off one by one. But I want to show you what a tomato with a bad spot looks like. So if you come across anything like this, I would take it out and use it for something else. You can cut the bad spot out of it and then just use it for something else. So this one is the worst looking one. This one here isn't so bad. It's just kind of a mark on the tomato. You can cut that out and still use it. And the same with this, just a little black mark on the tomato. But my suggestion would be, when you buy the tomatoes, to make sure that the whole case is perfect looking. If there are several tomatoes with bad spots that look like this, just leave them there and go someplace else. So now I'm going to wash all these tomatoes, and then from there I'm going to start cutting them in quarters and putting them in the pot to cook. Okay, so we've started cutting the tomatoes in quarters, and what you do is the larger tomatoes you cut in quarters, and the reason you do that is because it helps them to cook quicker. But if you have a small tomato like this, or like this, you could just cut it right in half. And some of the tomatoes might have a little dark spot on them. That's not really rotten, just a little dark. If you just cut it right out, then you could just put it right in the pot, and that won't be a problem. So after I cut these all up, I'm going to start cooking them, and you just cook them down for maybe like a half an hour, 45 minutes, till you get out a lot of the excess water. That's mainly why you're cooking them, to get out a lot of the excess water. And then from there we'll put them in the food mill, and then we'll begin to jar them. Okay, so now the tomatoes are in the pot and they're starting to cook. These are still raw. And I put the cover on because there's a lot of water in these tomatoes, and you want to get the water to start coming out of the tomatoes so that it could cook in its own juices. So I just leave this on here until probably maybe 15-20 minutes, till all the water comes out of the tomatoes. And once the water comes out, it'll look like this. You could see the water's boiling. All this is from the tomatoes. I didn't add any extra water here. And you want them to boil for a while.
So you want the tomatoes to boil in their own liquid, right?
They got to boil in their own juices, right. And what
Okay.
we're going to do here is boil it enough so that we can get some of this water to evaporate, because we don't want to can all this water. We just want to can the tomatoes.
Okay.
So in order for the water to evaporate out of here, now I'm going to take the lid off and let it start boiling until it cooks down.
Okay.
And that'll take maybe another half hour. Okay, so I just want to explain the cooking process here a little bit. These tomatoes are just about done. You can see where the majority of them, almost all of them, are soft. The skins are coming off, and they're very, very soft here. And I just want to mention that the tomatoes should be stirred about every 5 minutes during the cooking process, especially right here in the center part, because they have a tendency to stick to the pot. And if they stick to the pot and burn, then the taste of the tomatoes is going to be terrible. So about every 5 minutes you want to come in and you want to give it a stir. Alright, so like I said, these are practically cooked. They're soft, the skins are off. Now, if you look at this pot, where they're not fully cooked, you can see that some of the tomatoes are still pretty firm, and there's quite a few of them in there that are still on the firm side. So these need to cook a little longer. I'd say probably another 10 or 15 minutes. And these are almost ready to start putting in the jars. Alright, so now the tomatoes are they're cooked very well, really nice and soft, and we're ready to start putting them through the processor here to remove the skins and the seeds. So what I do is I take a couple of ladles full of the tomato, put it in this little Molini processor here, and just give it a few turns to separate the skin and the seeds from the pulp of the tomato. Now, if you do this a lot, you're better off getting an electric one, but we don't do it that frequently, so we're just using this hand operated one. So,
what do you do with the skin when
as you could see, I'm left with all skin here in the container, and once you get quite a few pieces in there, we're just going to throw it out. Okay, that's the skin and the seeds, and then we have the tomatoes down here. That's going to go in the jar.
Okay.
So we'll just keep doing this until we process all these tomatoes. Okay, so now we're ready to fill the jars, and we have the tomatoes already strained, as you can see, right? We've already put the basil in the jar, and you need one of these wide-mouth funnels to fill the jar. So I'm going to start filling this jar with the cooked tomatoes. Just fill it up like that. Okay, and you fill it up to within a ½ an inch of the top. So it looks like that. Just like that, ½ an inch. And then you clean off the rim. It's very important to clean the rim off, because if it's not totally clean, then this little sealing element here won't work. So now we're going to put the cap on and put the other part of the cap on and turn it tightly, and it's ready to go in the pot of water. And you keep doing those one at a time. You keep doing them one at a time until you fill the pot up. I could put another maybe 2 or 3 jars in here, and then we're going to start to process it so that the lids get stuck to the jars. Okay, so now the tomatoes have been processed, the seals have been set, and I'm going to take the jars out of the pot, and then we're going to set them aside on the counter over here, and they have to sit there for about 12 hours to cool down. And once they cool down, then you test the lid by pushing on it, and as long as it's tight and doesn't wiggle, then the seal has been set. And then the jars are finished.